Hi, my name's Jay. My brother calls me the ride therapist. It's a long story. Not a long story, but the constant conversation that's happening around the college is becoming too woke. And Bill Maher's talking about it on his show. And I don't know. It seems to me that's kind of the point of college, right? It's the one time in their life where they're able to sit around and try and imagine a better world, and a bunch of old cranky white guys such as myself telling them that they need to conform and just do what they're told. First of all, is something that I don't think they would have potentially liked when they were that age. And if they did, they're probably upset about it, which is a lot of the source of the anger, and are jealous, that but it's kind of the point is it when you're young and you're right at this point where you're about to become an adult, so you can actually conceive of, potentially what you might imagine to be a better world. And yeah, 95% of what you're dreaming of might be considered absurd. It's just the 5% might be something that does help the world become a better place. And that's the time for them to examine it. Now, should you go out in public and protest? I'm more of the Gandhi model, that just be the change you want to see in the world. But that's not necessarily the answer. So, whoop, guess that's my time. Yeah. So, but so there's sort of three levels. There's being a bad person, there's being an average person, a normal person, and there's being a great person. And I think what these kids are aspiring towards is greatness. And trying to have a perspective, a humane perspective for everybody. And are they immature and misguided? That's fair criticism. But again, this is the time for them to do this and to learn. And that's the place. That's what universities set up to do. And the original people that did this, and the precursors of these universities, were this group of people that had all these woke ideas about life that the Roman Empire didn't like. And the Roman leaders decided to torture them. So they put them up on these sticks with attached their hands and their feet, and they made them sit there and be not only torture and slowly die, but actually shamed them, so as a lesson to everybody else. And should they have not organized and tried to imagine a better place? Was it naive for them to say the things that the Christians said? Well, again, I don't think anybody kind of looks back and goes, boy, that never should have happened. So, but I believe ultimately the highest level is what Abraham Lincoln and then Truman and Marshall followed, which was a recognition of what Sapolsky talks about in the book Behave, where he basically, his thesis is that our behavior is all a feedback loop with our environment, right? So if you create the right environment, like a library, a golf course, a bar, Disneyland, a university campus, people's behavior will shift, and what they could potentially do will expand. And the fundamental mechanism of the forces in the environment that affect behavior do come down to economics. And so I think it is important to recognize the what Abraham Lincoln said at the end of the Civil War. In fact, before he said this, he went to Congress at the last appropriations for the war when it was clear the North was going to win. And he said, why don't we, instead of appropriating this money to supply our soldiers and killing the people in the South, why don't we go to the South, the Southern leaders, and say, look, instead of continuing this war and you appropriating a whole bunch of money so you can kill our soldiers, why don't we take that money and restructure your economy so that instead of the economy being run on enslaving other human beings, you run the economy on employing them. It's called capitalism, right? And then, Adam Smith wrote nearly 100 years earlier a description of what capitalism, and he goes into great detail about how the pursuit of capital is a better motivation than the fear of abuse and fear of being punished, right? And they're much more productive. And the Congress was it was gone too far, kind of like where we're at, because once something happens, then revenge, it's too far in that cycle. So, and then when at the end, the generals came and said, okay, we're going to win this war, to Lincoln, we need to now go and destroy the South, punish them for what they've done. Abraham Lincoln said, we're not going to do that. We're going to rebuild the South. And the generals were like, no, that's not what you do. They need to be punished so that they don't do this again. And Abraham Lincoln, and they said, because they're our enemy and you must destroy your enemy, sir, Mr. President. And he said, if you make your enemy your friend, haven't you destroyed your enemy? And then cut to the end of the Second World War, because Truman, Truman would never have been elected president with his voice and his way of being. It was just, but he was chosen by Roosevelt to be the vice president. And he and George Marshall executed, it was called the Marshall Plan. And they said, instead of punishing our enemies, we're going to rebuild them. And because of that, for 80 years of protecting them, 80 years of having a fundamentally different relationship, Germany has not invaded its neighbors, which is what it was doing practically every 20 years. Japan is not invading its neighbors, which is, again, what it was doing. It was a constant cycle. Young kids would go to war, then they would become heads of leaders in the government, and then they had a war mentality, and then inevitably something would trigger them to their trauma, and they would attack, and then another war would start, and the cycle would continue. And so to break the cycle, you have to have 85 years of patience and understanding. And that's all I think the woke agenda is recognizing. Now, I think the problem is that they're recognizing the importance of that, but they're not executing it by going to the other idea that I think is fundamental understanding, which is what John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach, one of the great philosophers in human history, his saying is you can't antagonize and positively influence at the same time. So it's a really hard one, right? Because when something bad happens, you get upset and you want to antagonize somebody. And that's always a first instinct. It's what your autonomic nervous system going into sympathetic side, which is fight, flight, freeze, is telling you to do. So taking a deep breath and figuring out, a way to turn your enemy into your friend is a spiritual journey. It's an internal journey that you have to go on simultaneously while you're having an external journey and interacting with another human being. So, and my 25 years of experience going and talking to strangers on camera, it works. I guess as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. I got to go get Starbucks for somebody.